record
Yes.
and then screen share. So
Screen share. No, you did. Great.
okay. So hopefully this goes well. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is trying to present part of the analytical and personal motivations of why I started this project and why I came here. So let's get on to this. So little structure, but first this. This is important. As you see in my, this is a painting that is in my first slide, and I've used it all along to in all the imagery of my presentations. Basically, because Colombia is born of conflict, and it has lived through conflict all along. So this is a painting made in the 1940s by Pedro Alcántara Quijano. It depicts the very first instance of the birth of the idea of Colombia, which is the brawl of July the 20th in 1810, where a couple of criollos were trying to honor someone. They requested for a pass to put some flowers and to a Spanish guy, and he basically refused it, and it led to a brawl that eventually led to a major revolt all along the country, which by then was called the Viceroyalty of New Grenade. And it's been 200 beautiful years of conflict all along. Many wars throughout the 19th century, also the 20th century, and I think part of it is kind of ingrained into the Colombian way of conducting politics. So first is that, and then we have the title of my project, which is the Lege Ferenda. What does that mean? Whenever someone in the legal profession is talking about the Lege Ferenda, is basically what people expect the law to be in the future. So I don't know if you've noticed by lawyers, but lawyers have this tendency of using Latin phrases to say stuff. So I've been telling my students for a while that we have kind of a Harry Potter complex. But it is also because we use language as part of kind of a strategy to conjure things. So when we use this expression, the Lege Ferenda, we are calling into the future to project our expectations of what institutions should be, what we think the law should be in the future. So that is why I named my project the Lege Ferenda. So what I want to present today is what prompted me to do this project, a little bit of the context of the healthcare system in Colombia, what I'm going to do or what I'm actually doing now, and kind of the lens that I bring to this research to analyze whatever I find. So there has been an issue, there has been an ongoing conversation about the true nature of health in Colombia, not the healthcare system, not the human right to health, but health as a general concept. So in the political arena, this has been translated into this discussion of health being either business or a right. But this is a tension that cannot be easily resolved, as the legal and institutional framework of Colombia has vested health both as a human right and and also as a public service provided in collaboration with the private sector. So our healthcare system is not purely public, is not purely private. We have sort of cooperation with the private sector. And of course, you could have only public health if you wanted to. So health is also public service, and other public services can be just provided by the government. But in the particular case of healthcare, the structure was put this way. So we have a major participation of the private sector. And the whole of the I don't think this is showing right, so I'm going to try to fix it somehow. But the whole of the system is I prefer to do it this way, otherwise I don't think we can follow this properly. So the whole of the legal system has shaped the health, the concept of health, both as a human right and as a public service. And you can find many legal sources that inform this double entity of the human right to health. Both international, because Colombian legal system drinks from the sources of international human rights law. So you have the Article 15 and Article 12, the first one in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and Article 12 in the Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And also you have articles in the Constitution of 1991. You have a decision by the Constitutional Court, which is very emblematic, of T760 of 2008. And we produced in this race of reforms that we've done to the healthcare system, we also produced the statutory law 1751 of 2015. So that's like the legal framework for the human right part, but we have a very huge legal framework also as a public service. So there's an inherent tension of how health has been embedded into the Colombian institutions. And this dichotomy has been so at the core of the conversations we have about the healthcare system that it is recurrent to see different headlines from the newspapers trying to show how problematic it is to have both these entities playing at the same time. So at some point in the early 2010s, the discussion was more about how healthcare being business, or health being also business, public service provided with the help of the private sector, led to, for example, here it says the root of the death in the healthcare system. There were some questions about integration amongst firms. So how can that contribute to monopolies, and then monopolies not only produce inefficiency but also debts? There was also questions about how medical, how do you call that? Specialized doctors, like an urologist or a cardiologist. So how these specialists were very few in the country, and they are still very few in the country. And there was this inherent tension about how, if this remains being a business, at some time it's going to collapse. And these are tweets either from sitting presidents, particularly Juan Manuel Santos, who won Nobel Prize in 2017, I guess. I can remember accurately. But all of them have been presidential candidates at some point, and at some point, every time in their campaign, at some point, healthcare comes up as an issue, with this very question, about it being, is it right for it to be a business? Should it be public? Is it a right? Should it be, what should it be? So before 2023, the persistent tone of the persistent tone of this tweets and the public discussion, at least when they were the ones discussing this, was that healthcare shouldn't be a business. But of course, you have a whole sector of private companies that, of course, have economic interests. So it's not just like saying this and then transforming things, because you are going to have some sort of, at least, if not backlash, at least someone is going to push back. That doesn't mean that the tension is, I mean, something that I think I should be clear about at this point is that my controversy isn't about if healthcare should be a right or a business. I'm more just trying to show you what is kind of the threat that has been putting these things together, at least in some level. It is very weird that people keep having these conversations about how the healthcare system might be deadly because it's a business. Because if you see, so this is a graph produced by the Ministry of Health. It portrays this is a graph of a survey called something like general review by the users of the healthcare system, something like that. And so here, the green one, it's adherence. I think it's a word in English. It's basically about if the people would recommend their insurer in the country, and as you can see, for 2021 was very high. We don't have data from 2022 onwards because then the government changed, and the current government is trying to push yet another reform, and they took down the one for 2022. So nice move there. Then we have this other indicator, which is, they call it global. It is the experience that the user perceives when using their insurer, and they rate it as good or very good in a 78%, almost 79%. And there's this one, which is interesting because it's high, but it's not as high as you would expect from the other two, which is access. So how easy is for you to get to the service of your insurer? So 62% of the people say it's either easy or very easy to access their insurance services, their insurer's services.
Can I just ask out of curiosity, like what was done in 2019, people get access to the health system, but they lose satisfaction?
Yeah.
That seems pretty dramatic, that an increase in access from 42 to 63, and then once they get access, they lose satisfaction in the system.
So part of my objectives in this research is also trying to uncover, not just to map the controversy, but also try to uncover what these figures have been telling us, because you can notice those things. I mean, for example, it is very weird that you have that 42 in 28 when you already have 3 years of healthcare reform since 2015, and there were actually very good improvements, because we have like this closed list of what could be financed by the system, and then I mean, why would you wait until 2019 if the reform passed on 2015? So part of my task here is trying to uncover these things. You were going to ask me something.
No, comment on that, but I will save it later.
Okay. So what, well, I'm standing before this scenario, which puzzles me a lot. So what I think I should do to try to come up with some sort of understanding of this situation is the following. So we are required to formulate a research question. This is very formally, but this is very formal for what we have seen that other legal programs do. But so basically, I am working on the work of Oscar Maldonado Castañeda. I don't know if some of you remember him. So he uncovered how there were different moments of the narrative of the healthcare system from 1993 till 2019. And the narratives were either crisis or reform or success. So there were like different conversations going on. So I want to find out how the first level is you have to consider that the Colombian state is a party to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So the Colombian state is the guarantor of an obligation to respect and guarantee the human right to health. So considering that that's the role of the state, how have the notions of success, crisis, and reform that's an acronym for the healthcare system in Colombia, being represented during the period from 2012 to 2022 in the media coverage by these media outlets, El Tiempo, El Espectador, Caracol Radio, or W Radio. They're different, but they belong to the same company, which is Prisa Media, a Spanish conglomerate, and La Silla Vacía, which portrays itself as a very objective. I have the feeling that it would equate here to information, something like that. Something like that. I mean, of course, translating these things into cultural contexts is a bit difficult. And I also want to uncover how these notions can be identified in the quantitative account produced by the Ministry of Health that's the name in English, Survey of Evaluation of the EPS. Stands for what you would call insurance. In the Survey of Evaluation of EPS services by users. The general objective here is to map controversies existing in the public discourse regarding the fulfillment of the Colombian state's obligation to guarantee the human right to health, based on the reconstruction of different notions of success, crisis, failure, reform of the healthcare system that are present in the journalistic coverage of the media outlets that I already mentioned, and the survey of evaluation that I already mentioned. So this is the way the project was presented and formulated and approved. But of course, these questions and this objective has been reshaped, especially by my presence in Matthias and Lasse's class. And of course, the conversations I've had with you guys and the company that you've provided through my 2 months here. I see this as a tool to be used in the policy cycle. I don't know if you are familiar with the notion of the policy cycle, but there's this whole discipline called policy sciences, which is it started as a subfield of political science, but it's not focused on the philosophical underpinnings of, but more about empirical methods to enact policy. So there's a lot going on there, but basically you have to identify what the agenda of issues is. You design some sort of policy based on the issues you identified in the agenda setting. You implement that policy and you monitor what you implemented and you evaluate it, and then the cycle starts again because it's never ending. This was a very rough and probably inaccurate translation of what the policy cycle is, but I hope you get the idea. So agenda setting is very important here. Why? So agenda setting can be understood in different ways. Agenda setting could be either how people talk about public issues, whatever they are, but also it is the name that was given to a function performed by the media in a study that was made in the 1970s, which was basically the idea that whatever was discussed in the media was kind of what becomes a public issue that forms the agenda for politicians to run on, or to, for example, enact some sort of reform. So, for example, in this exercise that you do about the people of the pond, remember? So the agenda setting would be part the conversations that these people were having and the opposition that these people were having to the project, or how favorably they saw the project, but also whatever media coverage is about it. And if media decides not to cover this, probably there's a good chance that it is not an issue. It doesn't become an issue. So as I was explaining my colleagues last week, my ideal investigation or research would be on Twitter and trying to uncover what people are talking, because Twitter has been a very interesting source of conversation, but you know why I can't do that or why it's complicated. So I decided to take this into looking at the media, how the media has portrayed I mean, for a fact, I've seen how those media outlets have taken people quotes from Twitter and put them into any article they publish. I mean, they've even done it with me. And so this ideal research that I can do also allows me to take media outlets as a proxy to understand and uncover how the conversation has been going. But it has also the added value that it's going to allow me to see how the agenda setting function of the media has worked along those 10 years. So this was something that I put there for my colleagues there, but in which I basically explain the creed, and I'm not going to spend your time in this. But it's but something that I wanted to point out was this thing about agnosticism, because I had a bit of a struggle with the concept. Mathieu knows, Lasse knows, Alfred knows, and Laura knows, because we spent like an hour and a half talking about this. Because I had issues on how are you really able to let controversies unfold themselves without putting some of you in what you are seeing. I mean, but I think I've worked that out. So yeah, so the idea is to take controversy mapping, that's one part of it, into describing what has been the agenda. And it is a remember I was telling you about sorcerers and stuff, and how lawyers are sorcerers and think of themselves like this. So I want to try to see how the public discussion was summoning the law of the future, what their expectations were when they were discussing these issues. So why did I do this? Why did I choose to do this? So legal positivism has been a dominant a dominant school of thought in legal thinking. And as I was explaining with you last week, part of the problem is that the idea that law provides simple and clear-cut solutions to social issues became a major thing throughout the 19th century and the 20th century. And this is a problem because people were approaching law as if they were uncovering the laws of physics or chemistry or whatever. And you know how problematic is that coming from your own backgrounds. And something that was lost for the legal profession for a long time, but it was kind of obvious for the rest of the world and the humanity, was that law is a product of politics. This is something that is very contentious even now within the legal profession. So we've devised all sorts of strategies to come up with clear-cut solutions now, and people also expect lawyers to come up with what is the law. So the law says this, you know, and I mean, even in the simplest legal propositions, there are always ways to interpret those in different ways. So that also has to do a lot with the fact that law responds to political structures. This is an idea that was proposed by a school of thought of the 1970s, which was the critical legal studies. And my favorite author from that school of thought is this guy, a Finnish guy called Martti Koskiniemi, which I mean, he has some interesting points to counter this narrative of law being, you know, this uncovering the laws of the society. So the basic principle is that law is not about solutions, but is more like an argumentative practice, which is very obvious for everyone outside of the legal profession. Law is about learning the rules of a language and being proficient in that language. So you are not learning what the law is, but you are learning how to speak the law. Like when you ask me, do you speak CSS? So basically it's that. And because it's about learning the grammar and learning the rules, different approaches to learning the rules often leads to having one legal rule producing multiple valid interpretations. And there's a joke that says that if you sit 3 lawyers with one rule, you have 3 different interpretations of what the law is. Again, this is something that seems very obvious for people outside of the legal profession, but us with our mantle of thinking of us like uncovering the laws of physics, well, this hasn't been that much obvious. But so critical legal studies is not like the thing right now. It has led to other schools of thought, but I find that this is a very relevant approach for what I want to do. Well, there's also the idea of ideology and how ideology is not just something that blurs your mind and your perspective of the world, but your way of understanding the world. And it also entails having very defined concepts of what things are. And this is important to remark within the legal profession, because overcoming legal positivism also implies bringing other epistemological understandings of the world, and overcoming simplistic ideas like ideology blurs your perspective of the world, but also people tend to think in this very formalistic way, like we are uncovering the laws of physics, that because of that, and as we lose the context of law being a product of politics, sometimes also the public discussion is lost into simple conversations of people saying, you are absolutely stupid because you don't understand facts. And enacting a new law should be based on facts. And that is a very problematic approach, as you probably know, because facts are scientific and all of that, but they're like the title of the book that you suggested. There's no such thing as raw data, but there's a whole process of how you interpret and you gather the data and you harvest it, and that is not a neutral process. But also, there's another problem from my perspective, which is that people tend to think of these conversations not as conversations, but as kind of wars amongst people. And sometimes different people with different positions perceive each other as enemies and not as adversaries. So when you perceive someone as an enemy, you are basically delegitimizing them. And this is a perspective that has very much been defended by a French author called Chantal Mouffe. Very nice lady to be read. So many French people in my research: Mathieu, Althusser, Chantal Mouffe. So the idea that what Chantal Mouffe says is, we have this problem with the idea of rational consensus, that people should agree on stuff, because it's the rational thing to do. And sometimes, and I think this could be your experience with controversy mapping, it's not about reaching rational consensus, it's also about what is the discussion that is taking place? Why is this particular discussion taking place? So, for example, when you talk about socio-technical controversies, you are kind of recognizing that the different positions are not simple stubbornness, but they are informed by other contexts and other kinds of other ways of understanding the world. So that's part of the task here. So I see myself here kind of what we see now, the explorers from the 16th century. So this is one of the first maps of the Americas, which doesn't really resemble the Americas. I mean, not really. But what I see myself doing here is trying, like in Age of Empires, if any one of you ever played that, trying to reveal the map in some way. But I feel that any approximation that you do to the map, at least in the beginning, it's going to look like this thing. Not because you cannot produce beautiful things like this. It's because you don't really, I mean, creating a map is something that has to be an ongoing process, not just a simplistic drawing of whatever. But of course, there are things. So I'm trying to build a corpus that has been very complicated. That's where the challenges of coding and stuff have been presenting themselves. So Matthew, help me with a scraper called R2 to get some information. But then I was looking at my corpus and I said, I feel like there's information missing. So in the first iteration of this process, we covered the headlines, the text, and the location, the link of the news articles from one particular media outlet, which is El Espectador. the spectator would translate to English. But then I realized that and as even today we are having more conversations about healthcare reform in Colombia, I realized that for example, the tax may uncover more information relevant to the controversy. And as I had a conversation with Martin Fanjong, he suggested that I did name entity recognition. So if I'm going to do that, I thought that I should also have who's the author of the pieces, which is like fundamental. But I also have to discriminate on what kind of content there is. So it's not the same to have like an op-ed to just some report on some, I don't know, some journalist went to the Congress and saw a debate on any bill, you know, and they're reporting. That is completely different from, you know, the leader of the, I don't know, associations of insurers in an op-ed, which is going to present a quite different story. So I'm trying to sort this thing, but from the first approach to this, I know it's not going to be in the recording, but just so you can see. So I decided to go back as far as 2010 just because there were very few articles before my initial point. And I produced this first graph of how many articles and when they are published. So this is a graph about articles per year and per month in the tag healthcare reform in the website El Espectador. So the points that are relevant for my doctoral research and here. But as I was trying to see what there was, and I mean, I had to do it because scraping meant that I had to see what was published in 2023. I just took the opportunity to download these articles as well. So what I know by now is that 2023 has the most of articles ever published in the TAC reforma, healthcare reform. But I also have a big spike here in 2013. So there are contextual annotations to be made. This is when the current government started debating the current bill that was already was rejected in the first week of the controversy mapping course. So here. And there was a lot of expectation in 2022. So the government, this government started in in August the 7th of 2022. So there was expectation on very little articles, very few articles on that. But once the bill is presented in February of 2023, you have a huge spike. If in a different visualization, which is a dotted line, you see a spike of 547 articles in comparison to the other spike, which is just like 100 something. And so, and you can also go into Google Trends and you see there's correspondence of people searching for the topic and an increase in this. I mean, I should do that. You can superimpose one on the other and you'll see that it kind of corresponds. The other thing that was done, but this is just from 2022 till now, till April the 4th, was a co-occurrence analysis with core text. There's one part missing, but I wanted you to see part of the visualization. So, and it was very, I mean, for the purposes of this conversation today, I think it was irrelevant to put that. because I just wanted to show you that there are some words that are being produced. There are some clusters there, but of course, this is out of the scope of the research project. So it's more like a nice nice encounter, nice finding. I don't know. But also that there are very defined topics. So over there, in the green section, you can see a lot of things regarding prices, prices of medication, the regulation of the medicine market. In here, you can see other technical conversation going on about the right to health, but also the financial provisions from the insurers, which have been a source of controversy because the government allowed the insurers to spend this money, but now is kind of prosecuting them because they spent it. Yeah. In the center, we find words that are related to other bills that are being discussed currently, and the last name of the current and sitting president, Mr. Gustavo Petro. And this cluster here is more about the bill that was being discussed itself. So the rejection of the bill, the project, Congress, so the Congress persons that are going to, the Congress people that are going to either defend or attack, but there's a constitutional procedure where people are, assigned the task of you have to defend this bill or you have to offer your arguments on how this or on why this bill should be rejected. So this is what is going on. The task now is first to automate this part because so the text, the author, and the type of content is a little bit complicated with the codes that I have right now. So we have to develop new codes. Because just this corpus has 1,000 entries. So doing it manually, especially the tax, is boring and complicated as you could imagine. I'm very much open to your input on this. I wanted to show you more, like I feel my strength here is how I see this research and where I come from, but of course, any input is welcome. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for sharing this with us. I think it's a broad, fascinating topic, and when I'm listening to you, it strikes me that I think you're talking about controversies, various types of controversies. So sometimes you're talking about a legal controversy, sometimes you're talking about a media controversy, sometimes it's political controversy, and perhaps behind all that, there's even a broader social controversy around the medical system. And it strikes me that when you're talking about it, you're making connections between these controversies in particular ways. So for instance, I think when you talked about the debate in the media, you were almost saying that behind the media debate, there is a legal controversy between two principles. And you also you also say at some point that where you make this agenda setting argument that the media controversy is what defines what gets into the political controversy. So I think even though, I mean, I'm sure you would say things connected in complex ways and all that, you have sort of a sequence of controversies and particular types of links between them. I don't know if that's a meaningful comment, but sort of, yeah. So another And right now it seems like you're focusing very much on the media controversy and mapping that, but maybe you have comments about how does the media controversy fit within the larger sets of other controversies? How does that connect to that? Because obviously everything cannot be just reduced to a media controversy.
Okay, so the way I see it, and we can be speaking different languages here, is I see the media as, put in a very simplistic way, taking pictures. Of course, they decide the angle, they decide what goes into the scenario, but so for me, they are trying to take pictures of what is going on. So I'm using them as proxy to see what things are being discussed. And for me, it entails all these levels of the political controversy, the legal controversy, because all of these topics are being brought up to the conversation. Sometimes if the conversation is moved forward because someone, like in any story, so a bill, yeah, someone presents a bill in Congress and a whole discussion starts just because the bill was presented. And of course that takes a legal tone because, what's the next step? What does it entail? Would it reform the right to health as we have it now? Would it not? Then sometimes other things happen. Like, for example, this is real. So someone died because they got very deficient care in a hospital, or they didn't even, there was something really awful that was going on there, which was that people were taken into ambulances to different hospitals, and because they didn't have a contract with an insurer, they were denied care. So this also prompted all sorts of conversations. I think I get your point, which I mean, you haven't asked a question on what I think you are asking the question, which is, don't you think, maybe it's this, don't you think those are different controversies to be mapped? And I agree. Probably they are. And probably this is going to take very weird turns in which I have to decide to exclude some information or make more relevant some information. This is part of my journey on your methods, because I'm trying still, like, I can read the book and I have, but man, like, I don't speak I barely speak legal. So and I think I have this intuition as well. From my perspective, even though there are different aspects of the same topic, I get your point that this might be controversies to be mapped themselves different, distinct from each one. Is this where you were?
Yeah, I mean, you're answering my question, but I think, but in a sense, you're saying everything will go through the media eventually. So the media is at the end of the day a trustworthy way to map any kind of controversy.
No, I don't think
that.
No, I don't think the media is. I don't think the media is to be trusted. Well, I'm not saying also. I'm neither saying that they are not to be trusted. I'm just saying this is the vehicle that I have to trace this, and I'm aware that there there's a huge potential for biases to appear everywhere. But that doesn't mean that I don't feel that I have to take the risk to do it this way, because of course, I mean, this is the way I see it. This is the first part on a larger project. So I think at some point I will be interested in using social listening tools to go into to try to see if they work, doing what we did with the APIs. but in this moment, at this particular moment, I'm taking the risk knowingly of tracing this controversy in the media, which is not a controversy of the media, but using the media to see how they portrayed what the conversation was.
Yeah, so that was sort of following up on this discussion about, so when you say the media, you are like, your sample is, as I understood, like 4 or 5, like mainstream newspaper
Yeah.
outlets, or like, so I guess like media can be a broad term here. It could be like the classic broadcast newspapers. It could be, of course, there's probably specialized health media as
No.
well. No.
No, this would be the media outlets where the regular citizen would inform themselves.
So like the classic big newspapers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think like, because on one hand you speak about them as a picture taker, right? That seems to be a somewhat neutral device, of course. Photographer is not a neutral, but it seems to be go a bit contrary to the agenda setting framing, which is like the active framing of an agenda. So I'm thinking about like part of the study could also be like what types of health controversies are newsworthy, right? Because these papers operate with a set of news criteria that makes probably some health controversies visible. Like we know cancer is covered a lot because it has the quality that maybe many people can relate to that, because many people know someone who has had cancer, or so it's a good news item, whereas other types of health issues are not, or like, so could that be part of the, like, if you want to use the media as your empirical entrance to this controversy, could that be part of what the question you're asking, rather than?
I don't think it could be. I don't think I should do that in this stage, but I'm very much interested in doing it at a later stage. This sounds really weird, but once I solve this having a PhD thing that I already embarked on, this is something I want to do, because here my focus is on the role of the ability of the healthcare system to be the guarantor of the human right to health. So all the conversation is always about, do we have a good system? Is it working? Do these changes allow for a better healthcare, or does this all make it worse? But I also want to see what other concerns we have. I have some clues. For example, one big concern that we've had for a long time is access to medicines. Sometimes it's about the price. Sometimes it's about the fact that you go to a pharmacy and they tell you that they don't have the medicine, and I mean, it entails half of your day and asking your boss for permission to go and get your medicine, and you can lose that. Sometimes it's even a whole day. I mean, these are things that I'm sure that don't happen here, but that's our common experience of the DEM system. Even though I think it's good in many things, I know it has problems. So yeah, we also have this, this is a conversation that could start if the reform that the current government wanted to pursue comes back to life, which was that the way the governance was designed might let people with rare diseases uncovered, or it's going to be difficult to finance the coverage for those diseases. So this is very much something I want to pursue.
Thank you so much. I think it's pretty interesting. It seems like you're making like both an analysis of how law works, but also like what goes on here. But I think I have 2 comments. One of them is perhaps a recommendation, or perhaps both are. So it kind of further goes on to what Torben and Anders perhaps are talking about. I would be interested in hearing like because you're being very explicit about when you think somebody is a spokesperson for somebody else. So sometimes you portray the media as a spokesperson for the people, like if a thing is in the media, it's also a concern of the people, kind of like, but perhaps you're paying a little less attention currently to who do these entities claim to be a spokesperson on behalf of. So here you have like the Ministry of Health, they claim to be a spokesperson for the users through their evaluation now.
Yeah.
So they say, well, the users think this, and now I'm the spokesperson for the users. So rather than you assigning who would you argue are a spokesperson for who, you could also look at who do the media claim to be a spokesperson for in what instance, right? I think that is kind of what you're trying to do with the text, but I think you would benefit by putting a little more emphasis into that, and I think that would also perhaps solve some of the what controversies is going on in what arenas, right? Because that could be a way of saying, well, now the media is claiming to be a spokesperson for somebody in the political sphere or something else, right? So basically saying what actors are talking on behalf of whom or claiming to be talking on behalf of whom. I would advise you to try and, go down.
I would ask your help with this. No, with this question, not with,
No.
I mean, the project as well if you want. No. So what I know so far is that the media there, I don't know how it works here, or I don't know what background are you coming from with this question, but what they claim is that they are being neutral. And of course, I think that's.
Sure. But neutral, there's different ways of being neutral. So basically, this is not like saying this is actually the opposite of grouping all the media together as the media, right? So it's moving even beyond saying, oh, L Inspector writes these things, but also saying, okay, in these types of articles, L Inspector are writing certain types of articles that is about single citizens having accidents. In those articles, the articles are basically trying to talk on behalf of a certain group of users who have had like very terrible accidents happening. In those situations, they are talking on behalf of the people or a very specific group of people. In other situations, they are claiming to be talking on behalf of somebody else, right? That could be more in the law sector of something else. So that could be a way of moving outside the grouping together people and also, navigate in the different types of controversies, the different type of arenas. So that would be a recommendation.
So how I understand your recommendation is find out who they are advocating at some point for. Who
Who do they claim they speak on behalf of?
But they never claim it.
But I think yes, if you read more closely, I think they do.
Okay.
And I think you could start by perhaps, okay, this is going to sound very, very rough, but I don't mean, but sometimes you make assumptions that you don't specify why you, so
yeah,
like saying the media speaks on behalf of people, right? Why do you think that? Is that something the media
maybe
says,
I miss
is that your argument or
No, maybe I misspoke there. I don't think the media is representing the people. What I said was my approach to analyzing this media outlets is because this is where the people there's a survey, and this survey says that these are the media outlets where people, the main media outlets where people get their news from. So that's why I chose them. But I also understand the point.
But I think that should be your argument then. The media, this survey claims that the media talks on behalf of these people in these instances. I think that should be your argument. But we can continue the discussion later on. The other point is very, very briefly, I would advise also to be a little more attentive of the visual analysis. So for instance, in the
I know where.
But it's honestly, no, not that one. The one by the Ministry of Health. It's so misleading, and I'm really annoyed by it.
Oh, this is not mine.
No, I know, and that's why I argue this. So they claim that this is like from 0 to 100, but they haven't included 100 in the y-axis, right? So it seems higher than it is. And honestly, you know,
Oh,
you said,
oh,
well, half
yeah.
people are really happy. They feel like they have access. That's every other person feel they don't have access. That's the opposite
No, no, no.
interpretation of the
Yeah,
same numbers,
yeah.
right? So I would advise that you're being, you know, more visual in what is actually being said here, because I don't think these numbers are good, but they were presented as if they were good. You know, I think that's insane. Is it not? But am I? But it's like if half the population think that they don't have access to health services.
Yeah.
That's insane. But that's not what this looks like. Almost half. Okay, 62%, right? But it's pretty
No,
screwed.
62% claim that they have good access.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
There's
so
a
the
40%
other
that doesn't.
interpretation of the exact same number is half think they don't
Yeah,
have good access.
yeah. So I hope I didn't sound like I was defending like,
So, but that's a way of, you know, putting forward also who is speaking on behalf of who, but also with what
Very nice
agenda, right? So that,
I think I have,
it's just being like more visual based. I'm sorry, I know.
No, no,
there's a lot
no,
of people who
but-
have
but-
comments, and I would love to talk with you more about it. So, yeah.
great. But thank you.
You
The
are-
first one was something that I don't think we agree in the wording, but I do realize that you have a very interesting point that I should make.
I think it relates to the agnosticism that you have discussed with other people.
Okay,
I think it's the same thing, but framed in a different way.
okay.
Just before we take more questions, I think we are out of the time. So if some of you have other appointments, then that's the moment to go. So we can stay
Yeah.
here if you have more questions.
Thank you.
We have a meeting.
We have a meeting now.
Now, here,
No, we can sit in Anders's.
I'll be there.
But you wanted to ask me a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so it was more like a high level question of the contribution of the PhD study. So it's aiming towards a PhD in legal.
Yeah.
So it's for an audience for legal scholars in a sense.
Yeah.
So that brings me to the question of what is the contribution of this whole mapping exercise? Because on the one hand, it can be seen as a contribution to describe the controversy in Colombia as a continuation of Oscar's work and so on. On the other hand, you seem to have this idea that it's also a way of arguing against legal positivism or
Yes.
positivism in jurisprudence, so that there's an audience here of legal scholars or that could or could not maybe be persuaded by your work that there are multiple ways of interpreting the law, and you show that to them. So that I think that there are like two contributions here, like one is to the control and the one is to the, there seems to be like an underlying that you want to
I'm more,
prove them wrong
I-
with your controls.
I'm more into the second one.
Yeah.
So I'm tired, honestly sick of this approach of seeing the lawyers just as interpreters.
Hmm.
I mean, it is nice that people see that we can have different interpretations of the law and to provide a good context of why that happens. But also the role of the lawyer cannot be reduced to read something and come up with some explanation of what you read. You have to bring to the legal profession also the role of the lawyer in the constitutive moment of the law. You're not interpreting a text there. You can make use of the Constitution. You can make use of, you know, the I don't know, the rules of procedure for a bill, and that's one thing. But also the legal scholar should be able to, and legal scholars are often asked what the law should be. So you cannot say what the law should be if you're standing behind your computer and saying, oh, and this happens. In France, they do it this way. They have like honestly, a very sick fascination with France in my country. So they try to take things and just, you know, transplant them acritically without any criticism.
So So is it correctly understood that you want to use your mapping, mapping to intervene in that
Yes.
way of thinking about
Yes.
how to practice jurisprudence?
How to practice, how to perform your role as a lawyer in society.
Yeah.
You're not just an interpreter. You're not just, you know, counting numbers, finding the true and accurate interpretation. You are also a very political agent in the process of the law.
So I think
So providing inputs for future reforms takes you out of a place of being just the interpreter and takes you to the place of someone that is equipped with very updated tools to provide insights in what the law should be.
But then maybe just before, then maybe one thing that you could do was to spend more time highlighting where the voices of the lawyers are in this controversy map, or like to kind of show their position. And so that could be a visual way of showing them their way of interpreting the law and their way of always bringing in a French context is not the only one to, or whatever. That could be part of the visual work or the analytical work that could strengthen that part of the contribution, maybe.
Thank you.
I have another meeting, but thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Matthew, something for you to double check. I find it very hard to believe that the lawyers believe in the unicity of the law, which you claim, or which you said. So you make it as if they believe it, and that's what I find hard to believe. I think they are by intuition, and I don't know, you know, maybe they do, you know better. My intuition would be that they are in the business of performing the unicity of the law. So it has nothing to do with them believing or not, but it's like saying, do scientists believe in facts? Of course no. But they're in the business of making facts. So they will always tell you that the facts are solid and that they find them, even though they are actually constructing them.
Yeah.
The same, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that especially if you want to speak or speak to lawyers or intervene in law, you could take it a very different way, which is we all know that the law is not this unique thing out there. It gets constantly performed in different ways by different lawyers. We all know that, and yet we need to perform this unicity to where is the work? So you know the STS way into that would be where lies the work that makes the law self-consistent. And given that there would be a value of self-consistency in the law that grants fairness to the different citizens, then, you know, you would discover that work is not like done once and for all into well writing the law, but it's performed all the time at a very big cost, which is to synchronize all those interpretations through, you know, and the lawyers know that this is where it lies, I think.
I think it's I agree with what you say. I think I never thought of it in those terms, but I very much we are in the business of making people believe that the law has unicity. Yeah, I've done that.
That's my question.
Okay,
Thank you, man.
thank you.
Also, your own timeline. You need to include all of the months.
Yes. Well, I can.
We went through that for some reason, even though it has all the no, I see what you're to show which ones don't have.
Yes.
Yeah, because currently, for instance, it seems that for, I think it was 2012, like that it ends in a high, and then next year it's low, but basically that's May. So you have 6 months with of nothing, which your data doesn't show. So it's just, you know, you need to, also it seems like some of the